I'm Suzanne Perrin, and I'm the director of the Schaefer Museum in Winthrop. I just want to welcome everybody to this webinar tonight, is a virtual panel discussion. We were hoping, of course, that we'd be able to host this in person when we were planning this out, but times change, and I think this is actually a lovely way to be able to get together, because then we don't all have to travel from all parts of the county. And we'd like to welcome everybody. This panel we're bringing together as part of this year's celebration and commemoration of the centennial of the ratification of the 19th Amendment to the Constitution, which granted most women the right to vote. And, you know, it's hard to believe that 100 years ago, before, 101 years ago, we weren't able to vote for president. And so I'm really glad at this time that we all get to have that choice and that we all get to participate in that. Women have been leaders in Okanogan County and in Washington State and the country forever. And this evening we get to come together and hear from 5 women mayors in Okanogan County and about their leadership. When we were researching an exhibit for the centennial commemoration about women and their efforts to vote and be leaders in the county 100 years ago, we really didn't have that much information about women being leaders. We had a few mayors of Twisp back in the day were women. So it's not unusual, but part of what we hope this conversation will be is a record for people 100 years from now, that we can hold it in our archives. So we have a snapshot of this moment and what's been going on in this crazy year with pandemics and economic downturns and wildfires always, and all of the many things that we've had to deal with and our mayors have been leading us through. So I'd like to welcome each of our mayors here, and Kate, who will be our moderator this evening. Carlene Anders is from Pateros. Cindy Gagné is from OMAC. Sue Ing Moody is Twisp, Mary Lou Kreiner from Tonasket, and Sally Ranzo from Winthrop. I'll ask each of them to say hello and give their name, and maybe just a brief tidbit about yourself, maybe something that your constituents may not know about you. So Carlene, would you kick us off?
Sure. My name's Carlene Anders, and I'm in my second voted term. I finished one term for a mayor that resigned, and in my second term now. Something that people may not know, my grandfather was mayor back in the 1950s in Pateros.
Thanks. Right, Cindy?
Hi, my name's Cindy Gagné. I'm the mayor for the city of OMAC. It was a position that I was given after finishing 3 terms as a city council person. I was selected by my peers to take over after our mayor became deceased. And so I'm in my 11th year in this position now. Things people probably wouldn't know about me is my husband and I have we're waiting for our second great grandson to be born. So it's pretty exciting.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Exciting. Sue, would you want to?
Sue Ing Moody, Mayor of Twisp for the last 10 years. 2010, I actually ran for council, and short 9 months after I was appointed mayor, and I've been mayor since. So yeah, I guess that's it. And then, boy, something that you don't already know about me, that I don't really know. It's such a small place, and I feel like you guys know everything. Well, I do have 2 boys that were raised here. My husband was born and raised here as well in Twisp, and my 2 boys actually are going to be 2 COVID graduates. One who just graduated this last spring from high school, and our youngest is graduating this coming spring in COVID. So what can I say? This is going to be, they're going to be really remembering their senior years. And anyway, they've experienced most of their lives with me being in this position.
Great role models for them, right? Yeah, thanks. Mary Lou?
Yes, I'm Mary Lou Kreiner from Tenasket. I have only been the mayor for about 3 months now. I was appointed as our previous mayor resigned, and previous before that, I was just elected to be on city council. And before that, I was put in from a deceased council member. So I'm kind of working myself up, and we'll see where it goes if I go for a term that's coming up for next year. So I'm excited to be here. I fall in love with this county over here because I grew up in Issaquah and graduated out of Issaquah. So that's on the other west side. And so for me, it was a big challenge to move to a smaller town, but it took a learning curve, but I have to say I love it, and I love all the people around us. So I'm looking forward to continuing. So.
Great, thanks.
Mhm.
Sally?
I'm Sally Ranzo. I am the mayor of Winthrop. I was elected 3 years ago. It was in 2016 election. And it was kind of a tumultuous time in Winthrop. They had 5 mayors within a year.
Oh.
So it was my turn to come in, and I decided that maybe I could bring some calm and possibly a little bit of sanity to the town itself. So my husband and I moved here 25 years ago into Winthrop. I fell in love with Winthrop immediately as soon as we drove into town because I am from Estes Park, Colorado, which is also another quaint mountain town. And we've had a couple of businesses, and now my husband's retired and I was supposed to be. But then friends talked me and my daughter talked me into being mayor. So here I am.
Thanks. I would like to say to all of the audience members that as we go along, if you have any questions that you would like to have posed to the mayors at the end of some of their discussion, you can either type it into the chat and it'll come to the panelists, or you can do the Q&A box down there. I will be passing this off to Kate, and she'll be posing some questions, and then I'll be monitoring the box. So everyone is welcome to just type in some questions there and I'll pose them to the mayors. All right. Thank you, Kate. Off to you.
Thank you. I'm Kate Wallace Johnson, and I'm honored to have served on the Schaefer Museum board now for 6 years, I think, which is as long as I've lived in Winthrop. I lived in Okanogan before that, and moved to Okanogan County from Seattle with my husband and our 2-year-old son, who is now almost 30. So I feel like an old Okanoganite. Okanogan County is a wonderful place to raise a child. And I'm honored to be with you all. My profession has been teaching, and Wenatchee Valley College at OMAC is my love. I retired from that about 6 years ago, and now I am looking forward to my next career. I've been about 5 years into now, and I'm a celebrant. So speaking in public is something that's very comfortable to me. Speaking in public in a way that I can't touch people is not. So I'm with you on that. I imagine you're all fairly social as well. So what I have tonight is a series of discussion questions to move us along, but I thought first, if you'd allow me to, I would try and anchor us a little bit in our discussion around women history, political service, and the 19th Amendment. So I have just written up a short little something that might give us a context for our questions. We celebrate the centennial year of the 19th Amendment's passage, granting women the right to vote by focusing our thoughts on women's civic roles, specifically women in leadership. When the US suffrage movement began around 1868, most American women had never had the experience of speaking in public. By 1920, when the 19th Amendment was ratified, many women had gained that skill. When learned how to lead from their efforts in the suffrage movement, but also from their activity in the civic leagues in their towns, the junior leagues, the churches, the library boards, the school boards, PTOs. Women became more visible in society, and the once firm boundaries between ladies and gentlemen in Victorian society, a distance misplaced in the West, weakened. So in 1926, the United States elected its first ever mayor, Seattle's Bertha Landis. And after she lost re-election, Seattle had no more female mayors until 2017, almost 100 years. So Mayor Jenny Durkin is the second mayor of Seattle, the female mayor of Seattle. And here we are with 5 mayors in our small rural county. And I think that that's something to really stop and consider. What is it about this rural area? What is it about Okanogan in specific and our previous history that seems to be fruitful for women who want to serve? And I know that, you all are the epitome of women in service. But, 100 years after the 19th Amendment this is where we should be. And I feel sorry for Seattle that they're so behind the times. But we need to define our terms to begin with. And so I'm really curious to find out, because I know you all have very different backgrounds. What is your definition of leadership? What does leadership mean in your world? And just feel free to jump in.
Well, for me, I think leadership is one of those, the ability to get up and speak to people, to be able to communicate, to be able to build bridges, and when it's necessary, you got to get your hands dirty. So I don't think you could stand back and certainly you can and be an effective leader if you're going to delegate completely and let it go. But mostly it's just an enthusiasm for what's going on and helping people gain that too. So leadership is fun.
Thank you, Mayor, again.
I would say that leadership is the art of listening. It's also motivating and coordinating ideas.
Other people.
The more you listen, the better you hear.
Anybody else?
I think I'll just say that I think leadership for me is taking responsibility for a role that is expected of you, or basically taking the responsibility in this particular role as mayor, I can say. And that requires running towards an issue or a problem as opposed to running away from it when that's what seems potentially natural to do. I think it's taking on tasks that require a combination of exposing yourself to potential risk and vulnerability for the sake of a greater good, requiring, I think, commitment to hard work and fortitude, while echoing what Sally said earlier, is really listening with compassion and critical thinking at the same time. And the ability, I think, or desire to work inclusively with others, because you represent such broad spectrums within our communities. And so I guess it's just, for me, all of that and looking towards creating a better outcome and better future. So it's looking forward in many ways.
I think that'll be a recurrent theme tonight, past, present, and future. You're all standing in all three. Anyone else want to respond to that question?
Sure, Kate. Yeah, I agree with everybody that's spoken already. The other piece is that it's about facilitating. It's bringing discussion, bringing everybody's points of view, and being able to create, uh, getting from point A to point B in whatever perspective or project or whatever you're trying to execute or fix or so there's a lot of action really within that, but it's very subtle. And the better you do at that, the better your community does at that. And so I think facilitating and hearing all sides is really critical.
Mhm. Thank you, Mayor Anders.
I have to agree. I feel that as a leader, you have to be able to listen and communicate with your community and develop relationships and going forward with projects and getting people involved and delegating and just understanding where everybody's coming from. Listen. I mean, for me, it's really listening to other people, listening to our community, what they really want, and then see if we can facilitate that. So
What an amazing suite of skills you're all describing here. I'm hoping you're hearing that. Wow. Um, Researcher and author on leadership, Amy Cuddy, holds that the way you tell your story to yourself matters. How did you come to hold your leadership role as mayor? What's your story? And I know some of you have already sort of touched on whether you were elected or appointed, but how did you get yourself to walk across that threshold from just a regular Jill to mayor of this town?
Mine was reluctant, I have to tell you. I'll just start right there. I don't know how everyone else feels, but I, believe it or not, used to be very shy. So painfully, actually. So, I mean, that's one thing. Maybe I should have led with that when I said, you don't know that about me. But anyway, I can say that because I was pushed into this position at the time, I just thought I would just do the task and then move on, right? And so I think that was quite different for me because then once I got in, I realized there was so much more to do that I didn't even know was an issue. And then once all those things started coming out, you know, my year and a half of my short term was up and I figured, okay, well, if I'm going to keep doing this, I have to run. And then that was the clear decision. It really was a real decision at that point as to whether or not you want to stay in this position and do what you feel needs to be done. And at that time, I did make that decision, and I've made that decision twice since and as well. So I can tell you that it does come with a lot of thought because it is a big job. And you may not get in the way that you would anticipate, but once you do, I think even the job is a little bit different. So I guess that's my story. And, you know, but you grow in it and you learn. And I think that you get better at it, hopefully in time. And so I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you, Mayor Moody.
I was an elected official when I lived in Estes Park, and it didn't end well. There was a lot of arguing on the topics that were dear to my heart, and so I ended up quitting basically. And I swore that I would never hold another elected job again, but here I am. My daughters, they basically talked me into it. I think it was the time also, it was 2016 and all the changes that were going on in Washington. And it was just very disheartening. And I just decided that maybe, you know, I could do some good in my little corner of the world. I couldn't save the nation, but I can help in my little corner of the world. So Roxy Miller was also a pusher for me. At first I was gonna do the town council, and then mayor just seemed like a good fit for me. Anyway, I'm happy to be where I am.
Thank you. Another good story. Someone else?
My story centers around the 2014 fires. Obviously, when it hit Pateros, we had our mayor and her parents' home was burned to the ground, and she'd only served for 6 months as mayor. The previous mayor had been in for 14 years, and she had run a campaign about goat ordinance that she did not agree with, and did a Facebook campaign and literally won by 1 vote. And so that's a unique history in itself. And then when the fires happened, it obviously was a huge challenge for everyone involved. Most of the council had either direct loss or families that had lost their homes in the 2014 fire. And so the Carlton complex. And so with that, the pro tem mayor, George Brady, stepped up to be mayor for that term. And I was asked to consider running for mayor beforehand, just because I was in leadership on recovery. And so my day job ended up becoming the executive director of the Okanogan County Long-Term Recovery Group and the rebuilding process around the fires of 14, 15. But with that, I said they appointed me into his council position, and I said, I will look at it and let you know, and just get a real honest feel of what it looked like and whether it was something I'd be interested in. I'd never done that before, but had been in leadership roles my whole life. So, but really hadn't ever considered running for office at all. Though my dad ran for county commissioner, he was on the school board. Like I say, my grandfather was mayor in the 1950s, and I didn't even know that. Until I came into City Hall and was part of that and saw his picture on the wall. And so that tells you how much that is. Anyway, that's how I ended up doing it. And I have enjoyed it very much. And so it was easy on recovery to stay focused as a community and a lot of overlap in the mayor position and the other work that was being done.
Thank you, Mayor Anders.
My story started in 1996. And at the time, like most people who actually end up getting involved in politics, I had a little bit of an agenda. I had a high school son who wanted to play soccer for high school, and there were none in Okanogan County. Wow. And so I started as an ad hoc committee to the council, and we nudged them along, and it was this long, arduous thing. And I was selected to speak in Olympia, and we got the grant money for the fields. And as we're going along, and I just keep getting more and more frustrated about how long this is taking and the red tape. So I told my husband that I want to be mayor. And he said, no, you don't. You don't know anything about it. And so if you want to get involved, you need to run for council. And so I did my research, and there was a vacant seat, and I thought I was selecting that when I ran, but they weren't sitting where they belonged. And I ended up filing against the longest running female council person OMAC had. And I went and spoke to her, and she was so incredibly gracious. And she felt it was time that, she was glad that I was there. And so I ran for council and was selected. Over the course of that 12 years, there were 2 different mayors, and the mayor who finally passed in 2009 had asked me, and I hold that dear, that he asked me if I would please consider running. He needed to know that somebody was going to take care of it. And I can remember the conversation as we're walking through after a council meeting, and he's telling me, now you'll run, right? You need to run. And I just kind of poo-pooed it and said, yes, I promise, and ended up passing. And like Sue, When I was in high school, I'd throw up if I had to do a book report. Could not speak in public. And probably the hardest public speaking thing I have ever done is that speech to city council to get my peer group to appoint me to that position. And they did. And I do understand it. And I'm thrilled to be here. And it's as fascinating now as it was then, and sometimes just as frightening. So here I am.
Another great story. Thank you, Mayor Gagne.
Okay, so my story leads from 2015. I was out of town and got elected to be the president of the Chamber of Commerce for Tonasket. And I held that very close to my heart and started fixing things, the businesses, and doing programs and Winterfest and some other things, our Founders Day parade, and kept adding more things. And I actually just resigned last year after 5 years of service. And we're halfway into this year now, and Mary Lou's back being the president of the chamber till the end of the year until they can find somebody else to take over, because nothing was happening and people were going, okay, so we did have chamber, but what happened to it? And I said, well, I'm not the president. And so that president decided that she wanted to step down, and asked everybody that, is it okay Mary Lou steps in until the end of the year? And here I am. And being the mayor, city council has been just a dream. I really get involved in everything. I mean, I am one of those people that I don't sit back. I just kind of get involved with everything, and you know, try different things. If it doesn't work, well, brush off and get up and try to do something different. But so here I am 3 months into it, and I have to tell you, I'm enjoying it. There's a lot of cleanup here, but I think I'm the right person to do that. So
Excellent. Thank you.
mhm.
Notice, I'm just really impressed by the different motivations and how your motivations change from maybe reluctance to the call to be mayor, to being willing to throw yourself in because of, you know, grieving or loss, or and then just getting involved, and you're all just throwing yourselves in there. I love those stories. Thank you very much. The University of Washington's Emma Redmond, researcher. She studies women in political leadership extensively. She finds that women tend to be elected, she says, into office at times of crisis. And I wonder if you feel that that's the case in Okanogan County, in your own situation, perhaps. And then what are the challenges of being you, a woman mayor in a time of crisis in 2020? How does that work? How does that look for you? We have the COVID, we have wildfires, we have everything we had before.
We in OMAC, we've been lucky. And we got really lucky in this fire season that things didn't turn. It could have, we understand that. COVID, it's horrible, it's real. So have the other things that have been horrible and real for the world. And we just seem to be resilient people in Okanogan County. Maybe the Great Depression didn't hit us here as hard as it may have been because we were used to hard work and using what we had and being self-reliant. So I feel lucky in OMAC that we haven't suffered those types of things. But I think one of the things, given the crisis, given how people are, there's such a lack of civility currently. So it doesn't matter if you're a woman or a man. And people really seem more now, although I'm sure it's probably happened before, they seem more likely to want rights without acknowledging responsibility. So with respect to everything that's going on, and this is from the position of, I love my job. I have a day job, so this is my secondary thing, but I really love doing that. I love talking to people, even when their views do not match mine. But it's really getting to be an art to be able to have a conversation with someone and maintain civility when sometimes people, they are so frightened and angst ridden. That's where I see the issues right now. But we're happy in OMAC that we've skirted some things when it could have turned, and it may. Someday it may.
And they'll have an experienced mayor at hand. Thank you, Mayor Gagne. Anyone else?
I'll say that, I've been, for the last 10 years, I've obviously been mayor through times of crisis for TWISP. I didn't mention earlier, but when I was reluctant was also because we had a crisis very similar to, what Sally was describing earlier. We had, I was the fourth mayor within 4 years. Everybody had quit. We had lost our department heads, police chief, clerk treasurer, public works director. Everyone was either fired or had quit. And so you're right, it is a time of crisis. And really it was like town hall was kind of imploding. People were very angry. Our citizens were upset. I actually got kind of ambushed at the grocery store when I was with my young son at the time, because people were so angry about what was happening and what is going on at town hall. It's falling apart. And I wasn't even mayor yet. I was just on the council, but certainly that would make you reluctant to be appointed. And yeah, we barely had a council actually to appoint from, and because we were already short on council. And so honestly, if I didn't take that appointment, there really wasn't that much else, but it truly was a time of crisis. But that being said, I find it fascinating that women through that study are found to be more electable potentially during those times. And I find it surprising, not because I think that women can't handle it. It's more surprising to me because I kind of feel like, maybe it's when everything's turned upside down, people feel like, well, let's just give it a shot, give anything a shot. I don't know. And maybe that's how we get in. And maybe that's a good thing. But once you get in, you realize, wait a minute, I can do this and I can do this really well. And so you start getting in there. And one of the things about women, I think, in leadership is that, we know how to work together. And during times of crisis, particularly, one of the things that you really need to do is work together. You work together to bring your community together, but you also have to work together through problem solving. And it's really not a skill that you do in isolation. I mean, you do talk to people, you work with others, you bring people to the table. And because you're used to seeing anybody at the table, frankly, you will bring anybody to the table that needs to be at the table. And so it's really not about whether or not you think they fit into that picture, because I think women, we might look at it slightly different because it's not really the traditional picture for us and how we look at the world. And so, there is a nurturing aspect, but there's a problem solving and a multitasking and all those other things that you might naturally think women, well, I'll say we can do it because I think we can do everything, but I can also say that it's because we've been tasked with it in our lives in so many different ways already. And so when we get into leadership, I think we do lead differently. And I think it is an asset in how we approach problems, and maybe not even see something as being that big of a problem when others might think it's the end of the world. And you need to see a way out in order to solve a problem, right? So if you're stuck in it, you're not going to lead. And I feel that, the ability to see a little bit more broadly is definitely a skill that, I would say all my women leaders here and elsewhere have.
You need to see a way out in order to solve the problem. That's an excellent quote. Someone else want to comment on that?
I think inclusion is a huge piece in controversy, and I think we have a tendency when things are in controversy to isolate or to kind of pull back and be with people that we are of like mind and like piece, like body. And I think it's the people that reach out and try and network and pull people in together in controversy are the people that do well in this kind of community involvement. And so I think that oftentimes I know these women here, and I call them friends. I've talked to every one of them personally on the phone at different times, and that's because they are willing to reach out and include, be inclusive of the entire county, of other things, other views. And I really believe that in times of conflict, when you are somebody that does that, then you are more likely to succeed in what you're trying to do.
When you reach out instead of isolating.
Correct.
Thank you, Andrew. Mayor Kreiner, did you want to respond to this?
I think they're right on. I mean, I've talked to most of them, and I have to tell you, just coming in as being a mayor from the council, I mean, I've looked to some of them for, am I doing it right? Or should I do this? Or should I do that? And just listening to some of their feedback. And I have to tell you, these girls, these ladies here are outstanding, and they should all give themselves a pat on the back, because I truly believe in every single one of us here. We put our lives on hold sometimes to take care of the issues that we have at hand. Every single one has. I mean, Carlene, I mean, she's a big leader with the force, the fire and all that kind of stuff. And Cindy and Moody and Sally, I mean, we're all right there. And if somebody was down and needed some help, every single one of us would be there.
Rushing.
And that's important.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And I think the reason that women maybe do that better than men is I think we have less agendas and we are more responsive to working with other people. We're also, by nature, I think, just excellent multitaskers, which is definitely what you need to be when you're a mayor. There's just so many things. I tell my husband every day when I go to work, I said, well, I don't know what's going to happen today, but I'm sure it'll be interesting. So, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Are there disadvantages to being a woman in your position? It sounds like your ability to respond in some ways, your perspective and your ability to multitask, but what about any disadvantages? Have you come up with anything in your years that
I have
were
not.
troubles for you because you were a woman? Not at all.
Not for me. I've been very successful of running my own business for 40 years, and I've truly been a leader. And so taking on the responsibility of being the mayor, yeah, it has a couple of challenges. It's because of the challenges that were here before me, but I'm working on them, and people are seeing exactly who I really am and what I'm capable. And that's saying a lot in some of these small towns that have some issues.
Mm-hmm.
And so, no.
You always have somebody. There's always going to be somebody. There's always somebody that's going to rub you wrong or
Yep,
try to
you
get
do have.
you to get pissed off or, whatever. And a lot of times I'll just throw out the old card as far as being an old lady, and I, what am I supposed to do?
Yeah.
So maybe more about age than about gender.
Yeah, I don't think gender, well, maybe with me, but it might be.
Well, I don't think old ages hurt me. So
So
Not
there,
old.
yeah.
I'm good.
From my perspective, 99% of what we do and who we deal with here in Okanogan County, that typically is not an issue. However, when it is, it's pretty dang obvious. And and my back bristles awful quick when that kind of thing happens. And it doesn't matter whether men or women in a situation where someone's trying to be a little more assertive, overly so, or try and stomp down for whatever reason, right? I bristle hard and defend people that are not being treated the way that they need to be treated. And it's really important that we all stand up when that's happening for any situation, because it is inappropriate to be disrespectful. And we've all had that. We've all seen that. Sometimes it is related specifically to gender. I know that over the last 30, 40 years, I've seen changes in that regard. And I appreciate that, how things have happened. And frankly, in Pateros, we haven't had a man elected as mayor. Oh, did I just freeze up? I just froze up, didn't I? We haven't had a man elected as mayor for over 20 years. So, it's I don't know. Anyway.
So it sounds like women need to be able to be fierce, but that for the most part, this is the 21st century in Okanogan County.
I don't think it's a disadvantage to be a woman. I guess to me, I think it's very, I agree with Carlene, what she just said about the fact that, people have attempted to perhaps intimidate you or whatever because you're a woman. But again, that's not a disadvantage of mine. I feel that that's their issue. And clearly, they've got to get over that. So to me, it's sad to see, but I think we have all here faced that at different times for sure. And that, I had one individual who would come to council meetings, and when he disagreed with what I was saying, he would just stare me down, literally try to just stare you down and kind of, and it was a big man, and I'm kind of small. And so, it was just the traditional intimidation kind of attempt. But to me, again, you're doing the job. You're doing a job here, and that's just a game. So to me, I don't play games, and you deal with the issues and you deal with the things and you do the best you do. But yeah, it's changing, and I agree. It's very rare when that happens anymore, thankfully. But yeah, it happens.
Thank you. Thank you for your honesty. I appreciate that. I'm interested. I know that we all stand on the shoulders of others. And Mayor Gagne has talked about talking to the previous council member and having a conversation that really propelled her into a movement, into a change, into a transformation. Who have been your mentors along the way toward becoming mayor, and women as well as men? What have they given you? What little nuggets of something have they given you to help you along?
Yeah, my nuggets really come from my family, and just that we just had I know Sue facilitated a project earlier on running for office, but it's the same answer. My family taught us how to be community people and volunteer as community service. We were expected, not just encouraged, we were expected to do things as kids growing up, to be empowered within our community at a very young age. And I think that's one of the greatest gifts that I got and I have given to my children And hopefully my grandchildren will receive that from my kids down the road, because it really is empowering. It solidifies people within your community that you have value and that you can contribute.
Thank you.
When I was young, my mom wasn't actually very, they didn't get involved civically. And so she made sure that we were in things like campfire. So campfire was one of those things, and you had an opportunity to deal with women who really had an interest in seeing that you were learning things and gaining some experiences that were outside the normal part. As I moved through into an adult, I had a kind of a turbulent first marriage. And so if anybody wonders why I'm so short fused, sometimes I'll find him somewhere, you can thank him for that. And so there's that part. But as I came into being the mayor and that first time I'm running, I had the absolute pleasure of working with Mary Koch, who many of you will know is, worked for the Chronicle forever. She's a fabulous writer. And she taught me, if you're willing to listen and to glean those gems of experience, she taught me how beautiful the art of communication is, and how getting involved and staying involved and embracing people. I so appreciate her, and I tell her, it's your fault that I'm involved in politics. Of course, she'll just laugh. And on the other side of that, we're talking about you move from the suffrage movement, and we're in Okanogan County, and how women weren't in leadership roles. Someone else that I've learned so much from is Mary Henry. Mm-hmm. And Mary is absolutely delightful. She was the president of the OMAC Chamber for a long time. She was instrumental in making certain that the tourism board got active, but her backstory is fascinating. For the longest time, she thought she must have a PhD in education or something, but she doesn't. Her story is very, very interesting. And she told me about when they first moved to OMAC in 1961, I think it might've been 62, but anyway, she had an issue she wanted to talk to the mayor about. And at that time in OMAC, the mayor and the men on the council met in the mayor's office. And so she went to the city hall and she wanted to participate. Well, they didn't think that was going to be a good idea, but they would let her come into the office. And so they gave her a seat at the back of the room and turned their backs on her. And she sat there. And so finally, somebody notices she's there and asks her what she wants. And she said, well, I have this issue. And so she said, and so then I made it a purpose to come back to every single city council meeting there was. And we actually still have a seat in OMAC City Council chambers that has a plaque on it with her name. And so, there's something to be learned from just being resilient. You don't have to be rude, be respectful of the process. It doesn't matter that they don't want you there. You need to be there. You need to have change. She had, children at the time in the school. She and her husband had a business locally. She had a purpose there. And so I really value the relationships with what I think are two phenomenal women, and I appreciate their friendships.
Thank you, Mayor Gagnon. Anybody else?
I would have to say that recently, in my past, I agree with Carlene that family is basically what gave me my strength. But now that I've gotten older and I've got this group of friends, and we go hiking and we go skiing on Wednesday, and we have wonderful conversations about just everything except me being mayor. That's one thing that I did put my foot down on. Roxy Miller has been a huge influence to me. I've known her since we moved to the Valley, and love her dearly. So I just want to thank Roxy.
It's wonderful that this recording will be here forever, so people will know these names, Mary Koch and Mary Henry and Roxy Miller, and family, and how important all that is. Anything else? Any other mentors we want to highlight?
Yeah, I have to say that my big supporter right now is my husband. We've been married almost 46 years, and he is a big player in my life. I have two children that live on the coast, and they think that their mom gets too involved in everything. So they go, "Are you ever going to retire, Mom?" And I go, "No, I won't," because they know who I am and I will not retire on anything. But I have to say that when Mary Lou became I was on council and I became the pro tem at that point, and I went down to OMAC and I had a conversation with Cindy. And I have to tell you, I look at her, I look up to her because she said, "Mary Lou, you got it. You can do this. You can be the mayor. You can do this." And to this day, I am so appreciative of her saying that, because I just felt that, the town of Tonasket really needed some help. I felt that I could be a very good leader, but I just needed that little nudge from somebody else as a female that says, "Hey, I've been doing this for this long. You can do it." And I appreciate that. So thank you, Cindy.
And we can see how Cindy's mentors helped mentor her so she could help mentor you. And then
Absolutely.
that's the way it's supposed to work, mentorship. What about women in history? Have there been women in history whose stories have inspired you? Maybe in your own family, but maybe in the broader sense.
Well, I'll just say women in history. I mean, I thought about this and I kind of thought about, the mentor question. So I'm just going to combine them a little bit. It's not really women in history for me. I guess I'll just say it's my mom. And I'll say the history because part of history to me is a story. It's a story of the past. And I can't talk about my present if I don't talk about the past of my mother, frankly, and her journey. She was born and raised in China. And so I'm first generation here in North America. And she endured a lot, moving to obviously another country, didn't speak the language, but what she had was fierce. I mean, she is my mentor for sure. There is nothing that, and I realize it more as I get older, which is also very interesting, because then I thought about the question and I think, the only one that keeps coming in my head is my mother. I can name a lot of famous women, but my mother is an unsung hero in many ways, who's passed now just a couple of years ago. But I can say that, everything that probably in many ways shapes me when there are things that, you want to run away from, or you just feel like, oh my goodness, do I really need to deal with this? And yet my mother is there and she's like, she would be in there dealing with it. And I just feel like, okay, Mom, you know what I mean? That's just kind of how it is. And I think that we carry that, within us in many ways, that fierceness of, it's not that you want to. I mean, who wants to get mired up in gook? Nobody. But you do it because why? Because your mother would do it. And I don't know. And so I just kind of look at the whole thing and her story and her journey is really fascinating. And coming to America, North America, I'm actually from Canada originally, but the journey overseas at that time was not that easy. And that rich history of what, you have to have courage to do that. And you have to put yourself out there. And yet there was nothing in starting a business or anything else that she felt like she couldn't do, even if she didn't speak English very well. So there you go. I think that's the woman in history that I can say I know a little bit more about, and I feel like maybe I should write about her so she's actually in a book.
Yeah, I think she would be very inspirational to all of us. Thank you. Anyone else?
Definitely need to write down that story.
Please do.
Okay, thanks, Sally.
Any other mentors you want to introduce us to? I mean, people from history, women from history.
Yeah, for me, it's Rosa Parks.
Is it?
Yeah, it really is, because she taught people to stand up for what they believe in. And, I look at everything today is that people need to stand up for what they believe in. And that's inspired me because it makes me who I am today. because I stand up for what I believe in and just keep pushing forward.
Mhm.
So,
And sometimes that standing up can just be a simple act, like.
yes, absolutely. Yep.
Mhm.
So,
Anyone else?
For me, it's a compilation of a lot of women over my lifetime that I got to see do things for the first time that gave strength. I mean, even Wonder Woman on TV, for God's sake, all of those things shaped who I am and what I appreciated, and that included my great grandparents, their journeys. I'm a genealogist, and so I look at what they did and who they were, and all of those pieces have shaped me as a whole. And every single person, every single woman that made that step to be the first in anything, uh, is a hero to me, is important to me. They put up with a lot. There's a lot of other people that have done firsts in the same kind of nature. I think I admire those people, because it takes an amazing amount of strength to do it.
Mhm. And it sounds like they've inspired you, that in a way that they're still living.
Oh,
with-
absolutely. I get so excited when people do that, show those things when they're fighting, when they're standing for something that's so important. That is critical. And I've actually started, years ago, which I will never probably finish, but 20 years ago, I started a book that said The Woman Next Door, and it was all my favorite women
Oh,
that
interesting.
um, amazing things, and I have those chapters. I probably won't ever print it, but those are people that are important to me, and they did amazing things. Like at Hanford, we had someone in Pateris that was part of the whole Hanford piece in the 40s. She was amazing. She passed away here 8-10 years ago, but those people are the people next door. And those women, when you talk to women in their lives and what they did, most of them have an amazing story.
Yep.
And I so appreciate that.
And most of them are inspired and inspiring. Just
Yeah.
like.
I totally agree with you, Carlene. We all have our Wonder Women in our lives.
Keep
Yep.
them.
And yeah, you have to keep them close, even if they're not still there
Mhm.
physically.
Okay, shall I ask another question?
Mhm.
Let's talk about history a little bit. How can our appreciation of history, maybe in our towns, maybe in our families, and maybe in the larger communities that we are members of, how can our understanding of history help women become leaders in the first place? Is there a connection between understanding history and leading?
I feel like I've talked a lot, but history is critical. It is absolutely critical to understand where we are or where we were to where we are now. And I think that getting to understand those pieces of how things operate, how did we systematically become this or that as culture and community and so on, it empowers us to make differences or changes that are needed. And those pieces shape who we are. They shape our communities on a daily basis. And we're getting more challenged now than maybe even ever before. I mean, or in similar strategic ways. We have to make choices here that are based on the past.
Knowledge of history informs decisions that we make today.
Absolutely. And without them, if we're not stewards of the past, we will make poor choices in the future. You can't make good decisions without knowing where you came from.
There's another excellent quote from tonight. Anyone else have anything you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, I thought about this one, and history is so valuable. I've watched a couple of documentaries lately that just, it's us only years and years ago, because we just as humans just seem incapable of understanding, that if we're going to ignore or disavow what has happened before, we're going to watch it happen again. We've seen some strange things happen recently, last several years. And we want to stand back a lot of times and just feign that we don't understand it, when all we have to do is peer into the collective history, and what we're going to see is we're caught up in this kind of macabre merry-go-round. Look at the things that have happened in the past. Prohibition is a good example of, let's purposely ban something so that the undergrowth will gain some control, or we will just simply not pay attention to what's happening to the environment while we stand and watch something else happen to the environment. So history to me is fascinating. You don't change it, so you can learn about it, you can embrace it, and then you can find a path that helps you not repeat the things that have just been struggles and devastating. So super valuable information out there.
We need to be students of the past.
We do.
So Suzanne, can I ask another question? Are we okay on time? Okay. So we've talked a little bit about this, the idea that American society in 2020 is a divided society, is polarized. We hear that we're polarized. In what ways are your own towns polarized? How do you address that? And how might we move forward to address that in the future?
We the polarization thing, for me, I think what we're seeing is that people are left to their own devices. So they're on their social media constantly. They're just swilling on whatever is happening on the news, and some of them are really being victimized by their fears and their anxieties. For the time being, I think it's important to reach out to as many people as we can, touch base with the people that we know or we haven't seen for a while, and really continue to be communicators. And if we can communicate with people and keep it moderate, because we don't need to have a scream fest. If people are just going to stand and shout, nothing is heard over the din. So we just have to communicate with people and beat back those conspiracy theories, when they pop up. I've had some delightful people come talk to me about some things that I'm not sure where they came from. But you have that communication, you talk to people. They're not crazy, but I just feel like people are being victimized. So it would be nice to be able to have communication, actual conversation, pick up the phone, not emailing, not texting, but pick up a phone and actually speak to someone. That will go a long way.
Thank you.
I think there's a lot of fear out there right now, and that's leading part of that conversation of the polarization, and the fact that people are in their own echo chambers because social media and other devices, like Cindy was saying, is really helping. Well, it's actually not helping, but that's what's actually contributing greatly to why things are in many ways the way it is right now. And that is, we're not getting out of our own echo chambers. We're not getting out and talking. We're not really socializing. And of course, COVID doesn't help, in our current situation. I think what we need to remember as leaders is that, obviously we all know it because we have to live it every day, but it is really about getting out there and recognizing, that there's more behind the scenes. We do talk to a wide variety of people, and really to kind of meet people where they are and having those conversations, because once you don't have that conversation, you're not getting any further with anything, on either side. And so, as leaders, you have to break through those. You have to get through to all sides, because at the end of the day, you serve all of them. And so they may not like you, they may not like your stance or anything that you do or how you look, whatever it might be. But at the end of the day, you're in service. And that is requiring you to not just only talk to those who you feel comfortable talking to. We talk to everybody. We talk to those who, in fact, we might even talk more to those who make us uncomfortable than those that do. Not always by choice, let me just say, but it does. It is. We spend a lot of our time and energy, and I know Cindy's smiling because we've been doing this for over a decade. And I feel like, when you do it longer, you recognize that you have to get beyond. It's always about that getting beyond. You have to break through. You cannot let it either silence you or stop you or you have to break through, and you have to find a way to do that. And sometimes it's an invitation, sometimes it's just showing up at their door or at the store or whatever it might be and talking to people.
Okay. Again, connection.
We cannot, you cannot communicate in anger. And it doesn't do anybody any good to get in arguments back and forth. And like Sue, I've had people trying to get me into, and I do have a temper, but trying to get me to that point. But I've learned that really what we need to do, I think, as mayors is we need to teach patience and compassion. We are in really hard times right now. COVID has gotten us all worn out. I mean, nobody wants to wear a mask anymore. I don't, but I will. We all, have these challenges that have never been brought up before. And now I think these other women here, I think we're handling them really well. So anyway, teach compassion.
Thank you. Wise words. I heard a bell, Suzanne.
No, I think that was my phone. I'm sorry.
I thought Suzanne was timing us. I thought, well, that's a really great idea.
Sure.
Can I ask one more?
One more, and then we do have some questions from the audience.
Okay. The last question I want to ask you all is about those who are listening to you in 2020, and they're young, they're not adults yet. And they're thinking about the world as it is and wondering, why should I care about political service? Why would anyone ever want to be mayor? What does that have to do with me? Can you talk to that person or that group and give them some inspiration? Briefly.
Yeah, briefly.
Yeah.
Briefly. Yeah, I think it's really critical that people, if they need to stand up and be respectful, be responsible, and give who they are and what they can do for the community when they can. And there should, if there's fear around that, trust your instincts, trust your abilities to do things, because you have amazing strength within you and amazing insight if you're even considering it. There's an internal voice. If you're hearing that and feeling that, run with it. Run with that piece of it, because we all need you. We all need everyone engaged and involved in a responsible way now more than ever. And so please stand up and be part of this in an engaged way, not necessarily a Facebook way.
In a civic duty sort of way. Thank you, Mayor Anders. Someone else?
I think that service it can be on many levels though. So, I have two boys who watched me, in this position for the last decade. And I have to say that we have great conversations. I'm very heartened by the youth of today to really experience how they are thinking, they are concerned, they are paying attention, probably more so than I was at their age. And I think that that's a good thing. That being said, I also know that I don't think being a mayor is everybody's thing. and not everybody wants to be a council member. But even so, there's something for you, because in our society, our democracy requires everyone to pay attention, and everyone, the people, are at the top. I know that in our hierarchy, we often look at, and I've said this many times, that people look at it like that the federal government's at the top, then you get the state government, then you get the local government, then you get the people. It's actually inverted. So truly, if we look at democracy, who are we serving? Well, they're at the top. They're the people. The local government is the closest to the people. And I'm also heartened by what we can do here locally. And I'm not saying that state and federal government's not important, but let's remember what each of our roles are truly, and then exercise those. Because the roles that we play as citizens in our everyday lives is so critical to the system that we are all within. And I think as leaders, we have to continue to encourage people to recognize truly what the system, how it's set up, and not to fall prey to what is being told to us sometimes as to what the reality of the system really is. The power is in the people, and we as public servants, and especially at the local government level, I mean, y'all know I'm very much an advocate for local government. And I do really, really, truly believe this. I know it's true. We need to have everyone recognize it, is what it comes down to, and exercise, our responsibilities, our duties, and our rights. But they all go together.
Thank you, Mary Ann Moody. Can we leave it at that?
I think so.
I want to thank you all very much for your forthcoming, open responses. And now I'll hand it back to Suzanne.
All right, so I've got a couple questions. And I'll start off with one, since we're kind of on the youth theme. And that is, how were you a leader, if you thought you were, as a child? So what was your first experiences as being a leader? And I will include, because I know we have some Girl Scouts on the line, because I know I invited my troop and we have some others there. So like Cindy said, she was in Campfire. So were you in Girl Scouts or other youth organizations where you had the opportunity to practice being a leader, or in your school government, or other kinds of leadership? Because it's not only like elected positions, right?
I was a Girl Scout and I loved it. My mom, for a while, she was the Scout leader, but I met so many interesting people. And I was a Scout for 12 years. So all the way through, from brownies all the way up and even past when I graduated. But yeah, I think Girl Scouts is an incredible organization, and I'm hoping that they're still going strong. I haven't heard a whole lot about them, but yeah, they tend to build strong women, which is really good, I think.
For me, as a teenager, a child, I was mortified. So I didn't take on leadership roles. I did do Campfire and excelled at that, because those, it's task driven, and the things that you were taught there. As an adult, I'm in Rotary and I'm a Kiwanis member, and there are some super good programs out there right now for kids, Key Club and Builders Club for younger kids. So don't let, you don't have to be somebody who's a great orator as a child or a teenager to go on and take on things later. The world has a way of allowing you to learn a lot of things and broaden your perspective. So.
I was a brownie. So I was a brownie, and that was I was a quiet brownie. And then, but I have to say that one of the things that came out of probably that was that I really became a defender of injustice. And so My leadership probably has been in protecting others and in the schoolyard playground. If somebody was trying to bully somebody, they would have to fight me first. And I know it's kind of weird for a shy girl, but I know it's kind of strange. Anyway, it's an interesting story, I'm sure. But yes, that's kind of my leadership, was really all in defense of injustices when I saw them, including when people wanted to beat up my younger brother. And so things like that, I just couldn't stand by. It really, really bothered me. And I think that that is leadership too, even if it's not in a group. Well, there you go.
Yeah, for me, I was in Camp Fire as well, and my mom was a scout leader as well. And but I also ran for offices like treasurer. I was treasurer in the high school, and I was always in sports. Sports was a huge piece of what I did and who I was. I started skiing with the ski program in Pateros at third grade age, and by 14 I was a certified instructor and started teaching at the Loop when I was 14. And so that in itself gave me a leadership role very quickly. And Ann Henry was my ski school director at the time. Loved her and that family. They helped teach me to be who I was too. And so that certification, I was always trying to get certified and do those kind of things. And I signed up for every camp that I could do. So Girls State, if you remember Girls State in high school, that was one of those things. And then started fighting fire when I was 18 with DNR, and then was one of the first women in Washington State to become a smoke jumper. So those are kind of some of my early leadership roles till I was about 20. And I was also a rower in college at Washington State University. So those were my roles.
So this one, I think it came early on. You were talking about how many of you were somewhat reluctant to move into this role, and that others told you that you would be good at this and that you should try this role on in some way. You got poked by somebody. What does it take to see yourself as a leader, or to see leader as part of who you are?
I think that's a hard one because I've really never seen myself as a leader. I've always been strong, and but I've never really, been a leader before. And the mayor, you are the head of the town, but I don't feel like I'm leading people around. So I don't like the word leader, I guess.
I'll say that I think it takes time to develop that sense of feeling comfortable with that word. In some ways it's laden, like a lot of different words. It's very laden, and I think that it sounds very negative, especially when you attribute it to yourself. So I think that is, I don't know if it's a woman thing or what, but I think it takes time to accept that. And I think it's not that you don't know you're doing the job and doing a very good job, maybe even, but it isn't necessarily how you refer to yourself. That being said, it takes time, I think, for one to come to recognize that, and it comes through interactions as you're doing your job. I think that you recognize in different aspects that people are relying on you, expecting and needing something from you. And as such, it requires you then to recognize in turn that there is a leadership that is being put upon you. And so the acceptance of leadership does take time. You may be a great facilitator, problem solver, whatever it might be, but so are so many other people. And yet at a given time with that particular role, it's like all of those things converge and you recognize within yourself that, yes, I accept, I am a leader because these are the requirements of this. But you're doing those things possibly in your whole life, your whole, everything that you do, and you've been doing it. But I think that it's a concept of how we as leaders don't always refer to ourselves in that way. And there's a danger to it to some degree on both sides. I don't want to get too philosophical on you, but I feel that on one hand, if you think you're a leader before you've actually done anything to lead, I think that's a problem. Leadership is so tenuous. It requires people to see you as a leader and you to recognize that you are and that you're taking on this cloak of responsibility. And so leadership is not just having people follow you. Leadership is also assuming the responsibility for them, for those people who are denoting you as their leader. There is a responsibility always in leadership. And so you may be very good at something, but if you do not recognize that you are ultimately responsible for this person, these people, this community, you are not really a leader. And so in that way, I really feel that you grow in it in time, you hopefully become stronger, and that sense of leadership, you just know because it's a duty. And I think that is quite heavy. That cloak is not easy, and it is not one that you just throw on. It's actually always on you. So if you are a leader, you can't say 5 minutes later, I'm not a leader right now, by the way, time out. You are a leader or you're not a leader. So to me, it's a very intricate and very personal relationship that you have with those that you serve. And so that's me on the thought of leadership.
I see a lot of heads nodding.
Mhm.
I see, you talk about leadership and it does seem daunting. If you ask somebody you want to lead this group and they just look at you like you sprouted a horn. But really, the whole concept of leadership really is about nurturing people. And from my coaching background, you want to build your bench. You want to be out there and you want to help people grow. And if you slightly delegate things and they grow into that and they like that, what you're doing is you're building this momentum because none of us are going to last forever. And so all of us want to make sure what's left behind is going to survive us. That's what makes us good leaders. That's what makes us good, responsible people. And that's how we do that. We get out there and we communicate with people and we share our insights and our experiences, and we help build people. So we're constantly building leaders. And oftentimes people will then take on a committee or they'll join something for you or they'll join in to a fun activity. So the whole concept of leadership really is about this communal energy. So yeah, we want to build a bench so that the team moves on after we're not around.
Yeah, I agree, Cindy. I look at it a little differently too. I think it's about the responsibility. If you're willing to take on responsibility and do things, then you're labeled a leader, right? But in actuality, you're just doing job. And the job of mayor to me is one of the least leadership driven roles that I've played. It's more of a servant role, and more negotiating and more trying to and less leadership oriented than any role that I've ever done, because I'm a lot more authoritarian than I am sit and work through the problems and work through to a solution in that regard. And so to me, the role as mayor has been the least one of my least leadership oriented roles, if that makes sense. It's kind of weird, kind of backwards from Sue.
Yeah.
But it's the most negotiation I've ever had to do in my life.
We
right?
all have our own styles.
I would say that too. I would say that it's different. I mean, I do think that, yeah, you're right. It is different. I do view it slightly differently with the leadership, not just how I expressed it, but I do think that there's a difference. When people think that a mayor in Washington State, 281 cities and towns, we all have different styles of mayoring, but beyond that, there's also different kinds of mayors. There's strong mayors, and I don't think people really recognize that all of the women here today, we are in a system of governance where we are in a strong mayor position. There are other mayors in the state of Washington that are not strong mayors by definition, and their roles are absolutely different. And so their leadership, we are actually responsible for various departments. We're CEOs of multi-million-dollar taxpayer municipal corporation. I mean, that's what we do. We manage staff. We actually do lead. So I have to say, I do think we lead. I feel that way because we have to negotiate every day to make certain decisions. It's not that we don't have help along the way. We have hopefully good staff that we can, rely on, but they still are directed by us. So I think leadership is, especially when you're talking in a particular mayor perspective, I think it's important civically to recognize what mayor it is. Is it a strong mayor system? Is it a council mayor system, which is then a weak mayor? And I think civics, we do really need to have that better understanding. I know people think that all mayors across the state of Washington they have the same job. We don't. They think that potentially all mayors across the nation have the same job. We don't. And so it is a very interesting thing, even talking to other mayors from other states. Their role or authority may be somewhat different or limited. And so then what we do here as strong mayors, we have a lot of responsibility. We're not just ribbon cutters. That's the difference I'm trying to say.
I haven't cut a ribbon yet, and it's been 3 years.
I'm waiting for one too.
Yeah.
I've done one, but more,
Oh.
please. Mhm.
Well, so I have 2 questions left, but we only have 2 minutes. So I will, I'm going to go with the youth question. So this is from a Girl Scout who's in 10th grade. She's considering going into politics, and she's asking, what's the hardest part of your job? I think we've heard a little bit about what is challenging for you. Could each of you say very briefly, what is the hardest part of your job?
You can't take, sometimes what people say is rhetorical. So don't take things so personally, and you'll be okay.
Good one.
I would say that, really the hardest part, I think, of being a mayor is juggling all of the different tasks and juggling all of the different issues that come in. You can't be an expert at everything, but you do need to do some homework every now and then. So I think the hardest part is just being comfortable with that and realizing that you can't do everything and just do what you can.
Yeah, mine is the false information and negativity. Those 2 things, people get more stirred up about things that aren't even true. They don't even understand that, they just don't understand. And so it's really important that you understand that they just don't have all the facts. So. And I want to say too, that the scariest thing for me was to sign that first budget, $1 million+ budget. When you start signing those kind of checks, and we dealt with grants with the FEMA thing, and I am fiscally, that is one of my spheres. And so when you're signing and like Sue says, this is your responsibility. You have to sign on the dotted line that everything is accurate and everything is real. That's scary. That was scary for me. Anyway, that was hard.
All right, well, I'm going to ask a quick, if you have a vision for your town for the future, so we can end on a hopeful note, I hope. Can you say a little bit about your vision for the future for your town?
My vision for Winthrop is for it to stay pretty much the way that it is. I would like to see it not become a really large tourist center like where I came from before. My vision is to have the town be prosperous, but also not turn into a mega complex for tourists coming in. I think the old Western theme is great, and I think we need to keep along with those lines and just kind of hold our ground as far as some of the things that might pop up as far as wanting to come in that are in the name of progress.
OMAC, as the largest city in Okanogan County, I envision that that part will continue. I see growth in our community. I am hopeful that as we move forward, we're going to continue the working relationships with all of our partners. And at some point within this county, we're going to realize the benefit of having inpatient facilities to deal with some of the things that are really so incredibly hurtful. And we can do that here based on the relationships that exist here. That's what I see. I see progression, but I see us maintaining our heritage. So there we are.
I see TWISP as being a vibrant community where people want to live and have good paying jobs, raise families, clean water, and ample ability to enjoy the outdoors and experience the arts. And I think that I love the diversity that we have in our town already, and that hopefully, will continue, because that is what is making our town, as unique as it is. And I feel that, just to keep that vibrancy up, and just so that the people can maintain and stay in here in our town, and have good affordable homes and places to work. And I think that that's really, it's really the American dream. It's a great small town.
I think that my vision for Tenasket is we have so many lakes and camping and just the great outdoors and a great environment to raise a family. So growth for us, we are seeing record sales in land and homes here. We're up 33% here in Tenasket alone. And so that to me tells me that there's a lot of people moving here from out of state or from on the coast or wherever they're coming from, but they want to bring their family here to small towns so that they feel part of it. Because I come from a big city also, and I really thrive on a smaller town. And I think that if I had to do my life a little bit over raising my family, I would have chose somewhere in Okanogan County to do that instead of on the coast. There truly is, it's heartwarming to be here in this Okanogan Valley, because there's so much here that people don't really believe that it's here, but we have it all. We have it all here. So
We do have it all here.
we do.
All of Okanogan County. I know, right? Sorry. It's a wonderful place to visit and then go home.
Yeah.
Spend a little money. Sorry, Sally.
And you guys, all those wrap-ups were wonderful for visions. I am scared to death of climate change and what it really is going to look like in 50 years. We have got to do something different right now. We've got to be more proactive in our preparedness and mitigation. We have to make a change. We will not be the same. Things have changed in 20 years, 30 years in everything environmental that we're dealing with. And I don't care what side of the aisle you sit on. I don't care what your perspectives are. If you don't see that this is happening, there's a problem. And for us to see what it's going to look like in 50 years, it's going to be determined based on what we do with our environment. Because these fires, having 4 disaster declarations in 6 years is absolutely ludicrous. I would never have seen that 20 years ago. I would not have seen that. And I want us to make a difference. So somehow we're going to have to figure that out. And I hate to have it on a kind of a negative downer, but it is critical. And I really want people to look at that and look at the social dilemma. If you haven't seen Social Dilemma on Netflix, you need to look at that because it is also changing the way that we do things in our communities.
And the good thing is that to add to Carlene in a positive way, it's exactly right, is that I think that some of these things are happening already in our communities, and it will really be defining on, what the steps are going to be as we implement them. So there's been a lot of good work that's been done here on the ground already, various committees, task forces, and things like that. And I think that it really comes down to the leadership and the implementation of that. So I see it as being a positive and a doable thing. And I can say that as chair of Okanogan County Council of Governments, that I do feel that our collective efforts in working together to make a positive change together is going to be the key. And I think that we're doing that already. I mean, all of these women have been at our meetings, as we have these council of government conversations that encompass all jurisdictions in Okanogan County. And so that's a positive thing that we should take away from this, is that everyone here has been participating, is actively participating in that council of governments. And it is something that I believe, will be moving us collectively forward. It's sometimes slow, but it is moving us forward because we do have a venue where we can all act together and hear the same things. So that's my positive note about how we already are working together, and we will continue to do that.
Well, thanks to all of you very much for joining in on this. We'll wrap it up since it is a little bit after 8. It's been wonderful to hear all of you speaking, and I myself have lots more questions. I could keep you probably for hours and hours to hear about this, but it's, we all have to get to dinner and everything. So thank you all so much for joining in and your words of wisdom. I think what I notice is that we move through our lives doing the things that we do, that we find that we do well, hopefully, and we find out we're leaders in the end, right? Like, you're just doing the things that you see need to be done, and other people see you as taking on this role and impacting their lives, and that is what leadership is. And it should just hopefully feel normal to you and to all of those who are going to move up into leadership positions someday. Kate, do you have any closing words you want to say?
I do, if you'll allow me.
We'll wrap up.
Turn us back to the idea as we conclude with our 5 wonderful Okanogan mayors who are women, that we want to keep a foot in the past, keep a foot in the present, and yet be centered with an eye toward the future. Abigail Scott Duniway was an Oregon suffragist. She was a newspaper editor. I know that Mary Koch knows who she is. And she's speaking to us from the great beyond with these words written about 100 years ago. The young women of today, free to study, to speak, to write, to choose their occupation, should remember that every inch of this freedom was bought for them at a great price. It is for them to show their gratitude by helping onward the reforms of their own times, by spreading the light of freedom and of truth still wider. The debt that each generation owes to the past, it must pay to the future. Thank you all for your efforts toward the future.